Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1799 AN. Today's date is February 24th, 2019, and the title of the episode is, It Began with the BREXIT, It Will End with the Central Bank. Now, before I get started, I wanted to talk about gold and silver and how they are on the rise again. This month, Trade Genius premieres the new Gold and Silver Volume 1 online video course that teaches you how to make money in the market. In the past 30 days, Trade Genius has netted its traders nearly 18% on their money from two gold and silver trades. On the crypto side, NXS and Waves have netted crypto traders just about 20% in total gains. Right now, through February, you can save over 50% off their bundled specials. Or use promo code Valentines for 40% off all non-bundled items. Check out TradeGeniusAcademy.com. Tell them X22 sent you. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we know the Patriots, they are working on this plan to get rid of the traitors, the treasonous individuals within government, and then eventually end up getting rid of the central bank. You need to go to the source. And I do believe the Brexit was the beginning of all of this. And we need to understand that the central bank, they're the ones who are actually really worried about this Brexit happening without their deal in place. And when we start to dig a little bit deeper and we start to look at why they're so worried, you can see it as plain as day that this is why they are nervous. Now, first of all, we know the central bankers, they do not like decentralization. And when the UK moves away from the EU, breaks the pact with them, guess what? The system starts to become decentralized. Now, recent developments have indicated that the EU is hell-bent on discarding basic civil liberties. For a start, the European Court of Human Rights has been fining and prosecuting people for making unsavory remarks about certain religious figures. Controversial Dutch politician Geert Wilders was dragged into court and tried on 5 counts of hate speech and discrimination for his anti-Islamic remarks in the media between 2006 and 2008. And think about what they're trying to do today. They're pushing forth certain laws to censor the internet. What else doesn't the EU like? This group of non-elected leaders. They don't like free trade. This is why they're pushing their plan on the UK. They have to agree to their deal because it protects the EU. It doesn't protect the UK. So approximately 44% of British exports in goods and services went to EU member countries in 2017. This is roughly around $274 billion out of $616 billion in total exports. The EU share of the world's economy has been shrinking despite growth in its total economic output. In other words, the rest of the world's economy is growing faster than the EU's economy. Now, this could partially explain why the UK's trade to countries outside the EU has grown much faster in recent times. Given its geography, the UK is optimally positioned to trade with many countries outside the EU bloc. In such an environment of free trade, the UK would or could renegotiate trade deals with members of the Commonwealth of Nations. The question is, what is the Commonwealth of Nations? Well, the Commonwealth is a voluntary association of 53 independent and equal sovereign states, like Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Singapore, and many others. Think about this for a second. Without the EU, without going along with the EU deal, and they go ahead with a no deal, they can expand, and I'm talking about the UK, they can expand their trade, and they can renegotiate all of their trade. Who wins out here? The UK. Now, I believe this whole entire movement to break apart the central bank system started with the Brexit. Because once the UK moves away, other EU countries are going to look at this and they're going to watch them. And they're going to see, wow, they are really doing well. They've renegotiated all these trade agreements with other countries. They're bilateral trade agreements, open and free trade and the UK is prospering, other countries are going to follow suit. What happens to the EU? Well, it starts to fall apart. What happens to the ECB? Well, it starts to fall apart. This is the beginning of a movement, and it started a while back. And this is why the central bankers are going to be doing everything they possibly can to keep this deal in limbo. That's their agenda. The people's agenda, I do believe, is to break apart with a no deal. And that's when you're going to see the EU completely start to fall apart. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw events or something like that if the move started to pick up where there was a call to say, listen, we're going with the no deal. If we start to hear that, we can expect to see many, many events in the UK to scare the UK to go along with the EU deal or to stay with the EU. Now, this is the beginning, and I do believe they're going to be breaking apart with a no deal. And I think this is going to lead to many other things, and I think this is what Trump and the Patriots are working on right now. So Trump is working on the trade deal with China, and Secretary Sonny Perdue, he tweeted out the following. Breaking. In Oval Office meeting today, the Chinese committed to buy an additional 10 million metric tons of U.S. soybeans. Hats off to POTUS for bringing China to the table. Strategy is working. Show of good faith by the Chinese. Also indications of more good news to come. Trump tweeted out the following today. Very productive talks yesterday with China on trade. Will continue today. I'll be leaving for Hanoi, Vietnam early tomorrow for summit with Kim Jong-un of North Korea, where we both expect a continuation of the progress made at first summit in Singapore. Denuclearization? ? So the mainstream media is out there, and they're pushing the idea that the trade talks, well, they're not going well. Everything is not going as planned. But as we know, Trump, he likes to put the message out there that everything is going great, and then he always says, we'll see what happens, which means there's a plan within a plan, and he's trying to keep the mainstream media off balance, trying to keep the deep state off balance, trying to keep the central banks off balance. And when all of this is said and done, there will be a deal with China. What comes next? Why doesn't the IMF, the mainstream media, the deep state players, why don't they want a deal with China? Why didn't they want NAFTA renegotiated? Why didn't they want Trump to get rid of TPP? Why didn't they want Trump to get rid of the globalist trade plans? Why do they react when he contradicts the Fed or the World Trade Organization? What are they so afraid of? They're afraid of their system falling apart. Remember, Trump tweeted out about the Brexit deal with the EU. He said this would not be a good deal for the UK. It would limit them on trade. He understands that there needs to be a clean break in the UK with a no deal, because this will start the ball rolling. He is pushing the agenda here in the United States. And once the deal is made in China, the mainstream media, the deep state, they are completely stuck. Remember, the name of the game is to control the narrative. He's controlling the economy. He has the magic wand. He understands how all of this works. And you can see those people who are running for the 2020 election, they're trying to figure out a way on how to gain the narrative and talk about the economy, but they can't do it. It's completely impossible without trying to call out that there's been manipulation. They can't take it too far or it turns on them, and they understand this. They do believe that there was a plan, and there's still a plan, to bring the economy down in 2020. They're all going to be shocked when the economy doesn't come down. And this leads me to what the next plan is. The next plan is to make the deal and stop the mainstream media, stop the IMF, stop the central banks from saying the reason why global growth is slowing, it's because of the trade deal with China and the US. Once he makes that deal, that is out of the picture. Now think about this for a second. What do the central banks have left to blame it on? Well, If there's a deal with China, they can't blame it on that. All they have left is the debt in the world. And what they're going to do is they're going to try to spin this on that it's the country's fault for taking out all this debt. It's the government's fault for taking out all this debt. Well, it's not really the country's fault. It's not really the government's fault, because there's no other way to run your system but to borrow the funds. If they loan you $1 or €1 and they attach interest to it, how do you pay back the interest if you only received one of their pieces of paper currency? You can't create it yourself. You have to borrow more. So it really comes back to the central bank once again. They're going to try to spin this, but I do believe that Trump and the Patriots and those fighting for the Brexit, they're going to start turning this around, especially with China now and Russia. All of this is going to be turned around on the central bank, and they are the ones going to be blamed for putting the world into this much debt, because it is their system that they created. It's their system that we are using. And remember, they've been telling us they're going to manage the world's economy. Well, they managed the world economy into debt. They placed austerity on many of the countries. They enslaved the people of the world. Everything will be pointing back to them. They are losing their narrative, their grip. And this is why the central banks are in a panic. This is why they're afraid of losing their independence. This is what they fear the most. This is what the deep state fears the most. People waking up. Once the people wake up and they understand how this system is run, you can't put them back to sleep. And I'm not just talking about the treasonous traders. You wake people up enough and they start to understand what the Federal Reserve is all about. They start to understand what the IMF is really all about. They understand what the biz is all about and where it all started from, the Rothschilds. They start to realize what their plan really was and how they bamboozled the world into thinking that this is how an economy needs to run. It never ran like this before 1913. And it's just gotten worse and worse and worse as we went along. They were able to infiltrate many, many areas of the world, many countries, and enslave them. Now it's time to reverse all this. And you can see how scared they really are. Think about the Brexit. Think about when Trump contradicts the Fed. Think about the IMF and when they say, it's because of Trump, it's because of the tariffs, it's because of the trade. Think about all the excuses they use and everything that they demonize, like gold, silver, cryptocurrencies. Those types of currency, they fear the most because it challenges their paper currency. And if people wake up and they start to realize, well, wait a minute, we can get gold, we can get silver to back our system. We don't have to borrow the money. There's no interest attached. If we use cryptocurrency, guess what? The coins are created without interest attached. This is what they fear the most. This is why they demonize it. But the people are waking up. And as time goes on, more and more people are going to wake up. And before you know it, the people will control the narrative. And this is when the patriots go after the central bank. When people start to realize what they've done, it will be game over for all of them. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.